So as we begin painting this picture of a seascape, usually if things come with water in them, we call them a seascape. If it just has land in it, we say landscape. So this has water in it, but that's what we're going to start with today. So the first thing I'd like for you to do is just remember, dip your brush in the water and then pat it so it's a little on the dry side. And then we're going to dip up the paint. We're just going to scoop up paint like this, and literally we're going to paint across. We're going to start at the top, and I'll move this around many times before the night's over, but I just want you to be able to see how everything works. You'll have to continually scoop up paint, because what you're doing is you're filling in those canvas teeth, and to do that you have to have paint on your brush. Now, there are many techniques that artists can use for painting what I'm going to call the underpainting, but all I need you to do is take the whole width of the brush and load it. So when you go in and you pick up the paint, you're actually moving the brush. See how I'm going back and forth, side to side? And then once you get to the horizon line, you can see that we're going to change and do something else. Now, what happens when you get close to these trees over here, if you will overpaint them just a little bit, we don't want you to feel like that you are painting in the lines. So go over the tree line and the horizon line just a little bit with the white, and that way when we get to the trees, they'll go in front or they will overlap. Overlapping is a great design element that we use to make sure that things look like they're where they're supposed to be. Now, some artists like to use a cross method like this, where you cross over just to make sure that you have filled in all the space. Some artists just like to go all the way back and forth. And so basically for the underpainting, it doesn't matter. But now we're going to change, and we're going to make it look like a sky. So we're going to change a little bit, and we're going to learn what a smidgen means to a Southern girl, because a smidgen means that you go in and you put a dot on the corner of your brush like this, like a pinhead size, a smidgen. And then all this white space you're going to douse with paint that is a smidgen, and that way you can get the blue that you want. Okay, so I've used up that blue, so now I'm going to get another smidgen. This is the dark blue. That's the purple blue. It's different than the water blue. So this is the purpley blue, or the dark one. Now, there are a couple of different ways you can handle the paint on this. If you use the whole width of your brush like this, you can get wider strokes. If you turn your brush a little bit, like 3/4, you can use the edge or the tip of your brush. If you want your sky to be calm, you need to have less movement in your brush strokes as far as the direction that they go. For instance, and I'll show you as we go, if I go like this, what appears to change between the marks that I made when I was going side to side? It appears to be rainy or stormy, or to have more motion in it. So that's what you have to figure out for your brush strokes. If you want a calm day, then all of your strokes need to be repeated over and over in a side by side direction. If you wanted it to look like a waterfall, then all the strokes would go vertical, up and down, but that's not what we're doing. This is the sky. So everything just goes across, and you have a sky, and it's finished, and now we're going to move to the water. Now, one thing I'm going to tell you that people sort of get a little anxious about at first is we're going to move fast, because we're going to get this done. But it promotes the adrenaline that's going to help you paint faster. If you think about everything that you paint, first of all, it's not going to be as creative, and it's going to take you till tomorrow at 2 instead of, a couple of hours. So we're just going to push the paint through, put it on there, and move to the next one. So that's what we're going to do now with the water. Now, if you look at the water that's in the sea that's back furthest away, you can see that that doesn't need any white in it. It's going to be darker. So if you have white paint on your brush, would you just go in like this and just brush off all that white paint? That'll help get an underpainting going. It'll clean your brush. And then we are ready for water. Now, as you notice, in this space, it's the darkest. So we're gonna do two things. We're gonna get a smidgen of dark blue on one side, and we're gonna get a smidgen of light blue on the other side of our brush. So we have both blues on there. And then we're gonna go back and forth like this. We're only using the toe of the brush. We're not using the width, because the width makes a wide mark and it makes it very simple. And it doesn't make it look like an ocean. So if you turn your brush like this and you have both colors on your brush, then you can see that every time your brush moves and the colors mix or change, then you have something that's really an interesting blue color for that space. Now, you've got about an inch that you've got space here. You're gonna move this way, and you see the sand's gonna come up, the beach is coming up, and it just sort of zigzags along this way. When you get to the tree, you'll notice that the water comes right through the tree. You can't see it because it's behind it, but you can tell that the water or the sea line is coming on up, even though the tree is going to be in front of it. So if you want to put just a little bit of a continuation of the line right through the tree, then in a minute the tree is going to go right on top of it. But you can see the color is dark enough, it's bold enough, it's vivid enough that now it is our base for our water. And that's all you need to do for that part. The next part that we want to have come up, we want the trees to grow right out of that space. And you can see that the trees are going to come in, and they're going to also go behind the trees that are standing up. So now what I'd like for you to do to get ready for the trees is take the blue that you have left on your brush, and I want you to just scrub it in here. And then I want you to wash it out a little, pat it dry, set it aside, and get your smaller brush. It's still the bright brush, but it's a little bit smaller. And now we're going to put the trees, bushy things, right in front of this water line. So to do that, you're going to take your Brilliant Green.
Did you say round or square brush?
The square one, the small square. We're going to start with that, and then we'll add the round stuff for a little bit more of the detail. Now, to get the green to turn the right color so it's not fluorescent looking, or it doesn't look like that it is too close to us, we're going to make it blue-green. So go to the dark blue, the ultramarine blue, and on your palette you're going to mix a half portion of green and a half portion of blue together. So it's half and half blue and green.
And which blue?
The dark one. Actually, either one will work, but since we're going darker further away, in this case, we are going to use the dark one. And to make it even look like it is further back and that we can't, it's like back in the marsh area, we're going to put a dot of the burnt umber in it. That's the very dark brown. So now we have three colors, but we have mostly green and blue. And now we've added a dot of brown. And see how it turns browner? So now you can see if you start between those two trees, and we're just going to make it a dark blue greenish color. Right now we're not building any foliage. We're just putting an underpainting for where we're going to build it, so you'll know where it is. So you start with a base of green, you add dark blue, and then you add a smidgen of brown, okay? Smidgen of brown. Now it goes The tree that's lonely out here in the middle, you can see the dark green goes behind it here, and it comes on the other side of the tree, and it goes in that space that you have drawn that looks like a little mound. And that's where the trees are going. And in just a second, we'll start making it look like a tree. But right now, I'm just gonna get a space set up so you'll know where it's gonna go. So we'll let everybody get a dark color set up. And those are your trees, bushy things.
Is that rain?
No, ma'am.
Here.
Oh.
It may be both, but right now I think it's, okay. So, you've got this tree, I'm gonna call it number 1 for now. I'm gonna call this tree number 2, and number 3 and 4 as we go that direction.
Did you wash your brush to get
Is that
the
the
brown
brown?
off?
Not yet,
Is that the same brush?
yes, same brush. I haven't done anything yet, I'm just telling you which way I'm going for the, trees. So on my brush, I still have brown, blue, and green, okay? Now, notice in between this 2 and 3, there's a little space between the 2 trees where that foliage still comes back there. So I'm saying that because I want you to put a little bit of that dark color in between the 2 trees. That's more bushy stuff. So it's right there in between the 2 trees. So now what we are going to do is we're going to use the big round brush, and we're going to start making it look a little on the bushy side. So to do that, we need it to stand out just a little and look like it is not even, okay? We want the tops to look a little mounded or sculpted. So to do that, we're gonna make a green that's a little bit lighter. So if you'll pick up the green right by itself at first. Now, while that is still wet, so remember we're working with acrylic, so we're working pretty quick, but while that's wet, we're just going to go across and we're gonna make it look like the marks are rounded and curvy and that they aren't even. So we don't want that to be a straight line. So I'm just gonna take my brush and I'm just gonna hit it just a little bit. It's just the green by itself, and it just puts a little light, a smidgen of light on the top like the sun was hitting it. But it's just a little bit of green by itself, and you may not even be able to see it very much, and that's the whole point. We want just a smidgen of light sort of twinkling on a leaf or two. And that way, as you come across, now there are a lot of different techniques you can use for that. If you want it to be real textured, you could just take your brush like this and tap, 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 and you could get that look of having more bushy stuff. But that is so significant and the great thing of things for our picture that we don't want to do too much else to it at this point, okay? So that sort of finishes up the bushiness that we need. So now, if you will once again just take all the green that's on your brush, hide it in between your paper towels, and then wash this out, tap it dry, and then let's get ready for beachy sand. So take your big brush, dunk it back in the water, and it's okay if it's got a little stuff on it. Don't worry about it. Just wash it a little clean, dab it dry, and then go back for your white cup. This time, I want you to pick up the white just like you did a while ago. You're just scooping it right out of the tub. And literally we're going to start at the bottom, and we're going to paint in a couple of different sections or layers so that we can play with the white while it's wet and get it to look sandy. So will you just take and go across enough of the space, going from the bottom to the top. You're going about a quarter way up where you see this water comes in right here, or in other words, the top of the boat. So just go over to the boat, go up to this water line with wet, just white paint, go under the boat, go all the way to the boat, lightly go in and make strokes of paint on top of your boat so that only you can see the line that shows the shape of the boat. And then go over the boat and do the same thing, and then you're stopping right there for a minute. So now we have white all over. It's around our boat. Now, we've got to make that look sandy. And to do that, we are going to use a smidgen of dark brown and a smidgen of red. Now, because if you don't have a lot of practice with smidgens and with paintings, what I want you to do is I want you to pick up, and I'm going to show you a couple of times, so I want you to pick up some white, and I want you to scoop it right here. Just lay it on your palette so that you can mix something in there with it. I want you to put a smidgen of brown and a smidgen of red. Now, see how red turned pink? If you don't want pink dirt, don't do too much, okay? What I want you to do is get a smidgen, like the very smallest little tip you can get. We're going for brown and red to make a sandy color, okay? So, a smidgen is important. If you get too much, do like I did. I'm giving you an opportunity to see. You just move over to a new space on your palette and put more white paint. Don't keep trying to make the pink lighter and lighter and lighter, because it will use all of your white paint up, and then you'll still just have a bunch of pink.
So, more white.
More white and forget about, yeah, more white and forget about the pink. Yeah, just move right over there. Now go over and get a smidgen of this.
Turn your brush over and see all that yellow, I mean, pink, put that, smear that right there. Now come over here and that's in your white.
Yeah, you just make them new white piles. Yep, mix all that up so it turns a brownish color.
Tad of pink and you want a little,
Look at your
yeah, you know, a little bit of brown in there, I'm sorry. This is that.
If I can show you what you're making, I think it'll make more sense if you look at it like this. See this sand color? It is so light. That's why I wanted you to put all of this white first. Because once you mix a little bit over here on your palette, you're going to go into the white, and look how natural it looks when you do it that way. It does look white and it does look sandy, because now you just have a smidgen of brown that is pinkish, so it's a natural kind of sand color. That way you can not put too much on your canvas at one time.
You can always, we're getting a little brown here, so you can add a little bit of white over that if you don't like that brown.
At any time you can just keep adding white. But once on your palette, once you have enough of a color that you like, that you feel is like a taupey color or a fleshy color, a light sandy brown color, then I just want you to come over here and streak the sand until you feel like it looks beachy. You're just streaking. Load my brush with more paint. I've got brown and a smidgen of red, like a very small amount. And I'm going to pick up more white. And now, because I don't have any white in here, but now I've adjusted the palette to how much white paint I want, I now can do it without having to put the white on there first. I can just, you can if you feel more comfortable doing that, if you're scared that you're gonna put too much color in it. But the beach can be, you know, as brown-ish as you want, as taupey as you want. You just make the decision, and once you have it, then you continue up. We just want your canvas covered. That is very important. You see how you're going around the edge where the blue is, And so as you go around, you can see that you've got the opportunity to paint over the beach line, the water line just a little bit. And then when the water comes over it, then you will get that next, when we start on that middle ground for the water. But you can see how the beach just roams all the way around, so that's what you're gonna do. Just continue adding white to your palette and then to your canvas. If you want it to change and be browner in some places and pinker in some places, that is a good idea to change up. It all doesn't have to be matchy-matchy. It can be different in different places. Now, you've got this big fat wide brush and we went up to here, and then you can see we've got a small area. You could actually paint this whole painting with this wide brush, but for convenience, it is easier sometimes to take your smaller brush. So you can actually put this away for a minute, get your smaller brush that's still square, that's called a bright brush, and then you can come in and you can get into the areas where it is a little bit smaller. And it's just gonna creep right back there.
And what color were you on that small brush?
It's still white, it's the exact same color that's on your palette. It's brown, pink, and it has a lot of white in it. We're still making sand right now. We're just making the beachy sand. Now the water's gonna come in and take over some of that space in a minute, so don't worry about it. The edging that you have here, where you have lines of darkness, is where the shadows are gonna fall under the trees. So right now, just scoop around that a little bit. You can go right on top of it and you can still see your brown line through it. We made as much as we could with the paint markers, so that way you could just more or less paint over them but still see them a little bit. So I'm going in that area. This time I'm adding more color. I've got a little bit more brown on my brush and a little bit more of the red. And that's the color that's getting darker up underneath my trees. But that just happens under the trees. So it's darker, it's a little more brown, a little more pink, and all of these spaces have a little bit more brown, a little bit more pink. You can see the edges that just come across this area right in here. That's under all the trees. We want that area of sand to go all the way up to your green line. And please don't worry if the green is wet and it blends in with that a little bit. It will look very natural. So don't worry if you've got blending going on, because that is a very important part of what we're trying to do. Then we'll make the shadows more apparent by mixing more brown on the same small brush. It's the bright number 2. And all we need to do is go in and basically make a space that we're gonna have for the actual tree and for the shadow. So we're gonna do both of those at the same time.
Is that the flat brush, the small flat brush?
Yes, it is. So I'm gonna make the tree trunk, and I'm also gonna make the shadow at the same time. The tree trunk is a little bit darker, so if you will add black to your palette, so this is the easiest way to do that. Go in and get a smidgen of, just go in and barely put enough black on your brush like that so that you can see it. And I want you to lay it down like this on your palette. And I want you to add the same amount of brown. Just go in and touch the paint, pick it up, and put them on top of each other so that they're blending. You got a brownish black color. But every time you take your brush like that and push it together, you're flattening out the end of the brush so you can make a line with it, because that's what we want to do first. With the tree number 1 that's over here, if you'll notice, there are sort of 2 trees side by side. I'm gonna use the edge of the brush, just the toe of the brush, and I'm gonna make a simple little straight line that makes the tree trunk. But I can do that with my brush if I flatten it out, so I'm not carrying a glob of paint on there. So, you need to do the same thing again so that you can do the next one. So go over, pick up more brown and black, flatten it out, and then find tree number 2, and you put one line up underneath it. Just one simple little brush stroke, just using the toe of the brush so that you get a straight line. You're doing the same thing to number 3. Now watch, that is the same length. All 4 of the tree trunks that we put in are all about 1/4 of an inch long. They're all the same size. So remember, this one is up further back in the space. So that means you only have a distance that's further away in this one. But look at tree number 4. It's further to the front, so that tree is gonna come here. So we've got a tree in the front, in the middle, in the front, and then sort of in the middle. So pick up a little brown, and now put it on your brush. So now you're carrying just brown instead of black and brown. The shadow's not quite as dark as the tree trunk. Now we've got this paint on here, and the paint is a little wet, so it's gonna blend a little bit and make it even lighter than what we have on the brush. But look at the shape. Start right up underneath the line that represents the tree trunk and go out.
See that little line coming out under the tree?
That's the tree.
I just showed it my way.
So tree number 2, put the line up, brush up underneath it and carry it out. And it makes a shadow. So that means the sun is over here and it's casting a shadow there on the beach. The same thing for tree number 3. You've got a shadow up underneath it, and you've got one under number 4 as well. Now remember, because that sand color is white, as soon as you put the brown on it, it's gonna change and get lighter and lighter. So each time you go over, you might have to add new brown paint to your brush so the shadow shows up. Now, if you're worried about your tree trunk being a little large, just take your brush and wash it out in just a second. And this is still the small, bright brush. And all you need to do is come back into your palette and get a little bit of the white base and mix a dot of brown. Remember that little smidgen of brown that goes in there that makes the sand color? Then all you can do with the flat brush is lay it down right beside the tree trunk, and literally you can just make it disappear by just going up and down the side of it just a little bit, if you feel like it's too fat.
Like mine.
I'm leaving none of that.
She was talking to me, y'all.
I'm leaving none of that.
I would too, because it's a fun painting, and I think that the size is not important to make this painting work like we want it to. Now, would you go and pick up, you can leave your brush just the way it is with the brown on it, because we're gonna take and we're gonna make trees like we made the bushes a while ago. So will you pick up with the same brush green and about the same amount of dark blue and a smidgen of brown, because the first thing we're gonna do is to make the darker color green, and then we'll make a middle green that has a lighter value, and then we'll make a lighter green last. Yep, we're gonna paint with the darker blue and the green first, and it's got a smidgen of brown in it just so that we make sure that it's dark. So, look at tree number 1, and if you would take your brush and literally just go in, push the paint in and wiggle it just a little bit. Just wiggle the brush. If you've got brown, green, and blue on your brush, as you wiggle, you're gonna create a little texture, and each one of those different colors are gonna come out in a different way. Go ahead and mound it up so that it comes in front of the bushes and it goes up beyond the horizon line. It goes up above it just a little bit. And it is, don't worry about it, we haven't put any of the light green on it yet. That's what's gonna happen next. We will build light green right on top of it, but right now we wanna get the dark green in. So now we will go with green. So you can go right over to your palette and you can put a smidgen of white in the green. Just add one smidgen of white in the green by itself. And then we're gonna do the same stroke. We're gonna lay it right into that dark green and we're just gonna wiggle it just a little bit so that now you can see the light green right on top of the dark green. Just a couple of little wiggles. The more you play in it, the more they mix and the less it looks like a tree. The little wiggle could also be done like little time. If you use the corner of your brush, you can literally just lay in little leafy-like marks by just using the toe of your brush in the corner and just tap, tap, tap. And you can get it on that way too, if the squiggles don't work as well for you. Now, we're gonna do that 3 more times exactly the same way. We're gonna go over and just put the dark green back on your brush. That is green, blue, and brown. So once you get that color loaded up on your brush, come in and paint brush number 2, bush number 2, tree number 2, with the dark first. You can do it flat-ish if you want to, or you can make it textury. But this is the underpainting first. Just make it look a little fatter at the bottom and it gets a little more mounded and rounded at the top. Let it come on up a little bit. And as soon as you get the dark in, go back and go to the light green that you have mixed on your palette with a dot of white in it, and then start putting the light, hitting it right on the top. You can make rounded like marks or just marks that almost are like commas where you're just touching the brush. And we're gonna repeat that going to tree number 3. We're gonna take the dark color. We're gonna go and fill in that space. Just make it look moundy. Go around, tap, tap, tap. Push the paint where you want it to go. Then add the green with the white mixed in. And go tap, 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 around, round, round. You can, depending on what kind of tree you're trying to make. There are many different varieties you could work with. And then the last one, same thing. Go back, get brown with green and blue. If you need to wipe off your brush a little bit in between, you can. Most of the time, it's really not that necessary because you need both colors in there. So these 2 trees basically have the last tree, number 4, overlapping tree number 3. So they do overlap, and you can see how easy it is to do that way. Okay, so if you will, wipe away all the extra greenish color that you're carrying on your brush.
Wait.
Okay.
I'm still doing trees.
Okay.
I'm behind.
Yes, you can just keep working on it, but when you get through, just wash your brush. As we get ready to go for the water, we're gonna go back to the big brush again. And we're going to actually start behind the boat, and we're gonna move up. The reason I'm doing that is because I have the sand color still on my brush.
You do?
So
Okay.
keep the sand color on there, because I want that to look like the sand is coming out from under the water. I wanna be able to see through it. So just take whatever you have left on your brush and just push some of that sand color into there. And then the blue stuff will come on top of it in a minute, but we do want it to look like it's a little sandy up underneath. So, we're going to make a color that you can use for water. If you take the light blue, remember a while ago when we made the dark water here, we used both colors. Now we're not using the dark blue, the ultramarine blue. We're only using the cerulean blue, or the brighter blue. I want you to put a little bit on your palette. This is the light blue. And I want you to put white in with it. So it's about half white and half cerulean blue. And it still has a little bit of that earth color in it. Now, I want you to go in and I want you to put a smidgen of green in it. A smidgen of green. And then add more white until you get the feel of, it's almost a mixture of blue and green and white, almost like a third and a third and a third. And then this is the color that you're gonna see. And you can see it's almost like an aqua. So it's cerulean, a dot, a smidgen of green, and then a lot of white.
Does anybody need more white?
Got to.
I do, yes ma'am.
Okay.
Please. Please and thank you.
You need more white?
So, with this base of white, now you can start on your palette. Go over here, see how I took all that color and put it with a white, like right here? Now we've got a color that we can go for, and we can make sure that we get it lighter down here, over here towards this left-hand side. See how much white I'm just picking in and putting? I'm laying the white in. And I'm blending the turquoisey color. And I'm using more white on this end. And then I am letting the turquoisey color take over more on the right-hand side. So every once in a while, I'm just gonna pick up that color that I made originally that has the cerulean blue and the green in it. Every once in a while, I just load my brush with some of that and I streak it right through. The streaks are very important to make it look like you've got space that goes from here to here. If you mix it together too much and don't put the streaks in it, it's not gonna feel watery. Now I'm actually taking the cerulean color that's here, I'm loading my brush with a little bit more cerulean, and I'm bringing it towards that left-hand side of the canvas. So it's streaky. Use it turned sideways. Now, I hear your brushes, so what you need to do now is take the brush, dip it in the water, and go over and mix it right here in the center of your paint palette, and then do more blending. Now it's a little more fluid, and it flows right across. So, as you go up and more to the top, you're gonna add more blue. But as you're down toward the bottom, you're just gonna stay and add a little bit more white as you go. But just follow your sort of zigzag around, and when you get to the water, just turn around and go back. That way it looks like it is laying right on top of it, or it's soaking up beside it. But at any time, you can pick up either one of the blues and or greens and white, as long as you continue a side-by-side direction like this, and you let the sand show through over here. That's pretty important, that the sand remain visible. As it comes higher, remember it gets bluer. So the bluer that you're using is the light blue that's called the cerulean blue, and you're making it more streaked towards the top, and you're making it bluer.
You just touched me with paint.
I did. I'm painting
It's gonna be a fight.
Now you
I'm
can,
gonna have to separate the two like that.
this.
She started it.
She touched me.
She touched me first. With the paint.
so once you get the bulk of this filled in, then you can do your little area that's a little island sort of on its own right in here. Has a little bit more blue in it than it does white, so
Would
you
you use the
can,
dark blue or the lighter blue?
light blue. I haven't used any dark blue in the water.
Okay.
But I did, you know, sometimes the difference is that you add white to it or you don't add white to it. But it's still the light blue color. And you can streak it as much as you want. You can use it right out of the tub if you want it to go darker. And then if you need it lighter, all you have to do is add green to it, or you can add white to it.
That's
Absolutely.
Now, I picked up a little green in this little spot right here, and that looks like the Bahamian water always remember seeing. See how bright? We don't have that kind of green water here, but we can wish for it. So you can put as much green or blue as you want to in that spot. Then, if you will take all that paint off of your brush and wash it, what we want to do next is make sure that we have a seeping in of the water here. I don't have anything on my brush except a little water.
Sean, some people are
Okay.
still trying to catch up.
All right.
They're close.
You can do it whenever you need to do it, if you need to do it on your picture, because everybody's in a little different part. But I washed out my brush and it's clean. I don't have anything on it. And now I'm picking up a little white. And it's pretty fluid. It's not like a watercolor base, but it is lighter because it has more water in it, about half water and half white paint. You can go over like this, go over the sandy space and come right back in, and this time you're overlapping the water, so you begin to feel like that's exactly what's happening. The water's going out, and a little bit of the blue is gonna blend in with the sand, And that's fine because it makes it look natural. It gives it a feel of that's really what happens. Then, with all that white on your brush, you are going to take a smidgen of dark brown and a smidgen of that blue that we're using, the light blue. And if you'll notice in here, in this area, do you see where it's got a little hint of a neutral color that's not a real bright green or blue? That's where we're gonna add a little bit of the sand color. So I just took white, I put a smidge, just a smidge of brown in it, and I rubbed it across just a little bit so it feels a little bit more like you're seeing earth in that space. And that will give you, if you said that you felt like you were losing some of your beach, now you'll get your beach back and you can have as much as you want. But that's sort of the sandy color that's gonna come in. So you can alternate between that and the white and have it as lush as you want it to. But it really gives it a natural feel if you let that sand and the water almost weave together with the two colors. Yeah, you just have to if you don't want it to mix, you just have to wash that brush again.
And you said with that sand, you're just doing white with a little bit of brown in it?
I did. This part, I have white and brown. And remember, the original color has that smidgen of pink in it.
Hers actually.
My brush is
Remember, the original beach color had brown and pink in it. So, if you need to come back and go through like this, it's just a weaving so that you get a natural feel of the water. The water actually goes all the way over just to the edge of the canvas, so don't feel like that you are having too much water, because all that beach color can come all the way over there. But it's just a streaky kind of color, it's not solid. But you can have as much as you want. And that's all we need for the big brush. So we're gonna wash that out and get ready for the boat's shadow on the ground. Take your smallest round brush and just load it with brown. And basically you're gonna go under and find your shadow space. If you'll find your line, if you lost it, you'll be able to see it as a straight line that runs from the front of your boat and out and under. You can see I'm just dipping and I'm using the whole width of the round brush to go in and identify the space under the boat.
You're using brown or black?
Just brown now.
Gotcha.
Gonna add black in just a minute. but we're going just dark brown.
What brush are we using, the small one
The
now?
small round brush. It's a little thinner out towards the front. It gets thicker under the boat just a little bit. And then it just keeps tapering until it gets fatter and fatter. Or thinner and thinner, whichever way you're looking at it. Now you can pick up black with the same brush. You're gonna do the same.
You're gonna make it what?
Stripe,
Stripe.
I'm gonna stripe the.
So, if we're ready for some color in the boat, I'm gonna take and change brushes and go to the larger round brush. And now that you've used a couple of these brushes, you'll begin to sort of figure out what works best for you, either having a round or a flat. So please use the one that's more comfortable for you. But I'm gonna use this one, and I'm literally gonna go up and take the point of the brush, the roundness, and I'm gonna go in like this and get up underneath there. Now, I'm covering up boat numbers because I don't necessarily care about them. And if you wanna repaint them, you can. But literally, we're just going in with white and we're painting it first. And this will be the underpainting. And the only thing you need to go around would be the little red flag thing. But you can just paint everything else white by just scrubbing the brush right across. And once all the boat is white, then we're gonna put the shading on it so that it looks like it is not round, but it's curved. To do that on the brush, we're gonna add a dot of black, so it'll look grayish, and a dot of brown, because that'll tie it together with everything else we've done in the picture and make it look more natural. And all I'm gonna do is just a little bit of the black and brown. I'm gonna come in on the boat and I'm gonna start scrubbing it in. And we've done that on all the parts of the picture today. We put white here, we put blue streaks in. We put white here, we put brown streaks in. Over here, we put blue streaks in. So everything's on the streaky side. Put white first and then streak it so that you can get the look of it being old or worn out or just round. It could go either way. In this picture, it's just a pretty new white boat, so we won't have to worry about making it look, yeah, like that's right. It doesn't necessarily have to be a shipwreck look. So you can put as much of the gray in, but the gray basically is for more or less the bottom half, like this, put it on the bottom half. Now, in a second, when that gets dry enough, we're gonna build some boards right on top of this gray tone. So I know right now you may thinking it's a little gray, and it is. That's what we wanna do first. And that'll help us build the boards, so they look like boards right on top of it. So once you have the gray in, you're gonna wash your brush, and we're gonna put white on it. Or whatever color you want your boat to be if you're changing it. But literally, I'm gonna forget that that little red tab is there so that I can make a straight pull through on a board. And then I can go back and put it in if I decide to. But literally with the point of the brush, I'm just gonna go in and I'm gonna start in the corner to make the first board. I'm using the whole width of the brush to come in and paint the top board. Now, when I got about 3 inches down, I ran out of paint, so I had to load again. So I'm picking up where I left off, and I'm just pulling the white right across the board of the boat. That's the first board, and that gives me an even line or an edge for the boat. So I'm just pulling a streak all the way down.
The small brush.
No, ma'am, I have the large one.
The large round.
the large round one. Large round.
Just straight white.
Uh-huh, I just have white, because I've already got gray in it, so now I'm just using the white to make an edge across the top. So once I get one white board all the way across the top, I'm gonna skip a little spot so I can see the gray, and then I'm gonna put another board. And you don't wanna see every one of them individually necessarily, but you can if you want to. But I just now put a second board underneath the first one. And then the other boards are gonna stay the way they are with all that grayish brown in it. That way you get two light boards on the top and the grayish one at the bottom, and it looks round-ish, like we want it to. And now with the white on the brush, I'm just gonna go back in and put the first color that we ever used with the brown and the red in to make the sand color. And I want the brown to meet with the sand color here, so I'm just putting that back in. And it just depends on how much color, if you had enough color in there a while ago, or if yours blended out, whatever you need to do up underneath it. But just, it needs to blend a little bit between the brown and the sand color. It's a small cast shadow, so you see, the black first, and then you see the brown, and then it turns into the sand color in a very, very small space. So now for details, you can do what you want to as far as with the chain or with the red flag. I think the red makes a pretty statement on there. I think it's good against all the other color. But literally on here, it's almost like a triangle shape. So you can just draw the triangle right on top. And for the chain or the rope, I'm just dotting in a small amount of brown. I just changed over from red, put a little brown on it. And just made it loop around, just a small little dot kind of shape so that you can see it. Now as you just look at your inspiration piece, look at your painting overall and see if there's something that you need to tweak. And then that'll be a time where you can just look at it and see, does this need more green? Does it need more blue? Does the sand need to come further this way? Does the water need to go more that way? Does the gray need to be stronger? Does the shape of the inside of the boat look like it matches the outside of the boat? And those are just little things that you can work on when all the painting is finished, like all the canvas space is now finished. So it's easy for you to make a few little adjustments. And that does mean that you'll have to use probably several brushes. So wash and clean all the ones that you need to reuse. And then they can work better for you for the next color.